So, folks, we're going to show how in depth we are on the Texas analysis here. We're not going to mention a certain somebody for maybe 10 minutes. We'll go 10 minutes. We can do it. You can do it, all of you. We can focus on other positions, other possibilities. We can do it, but we will get to that guy, definitely. Okay, Matthew, Bill Norton comes in from Arizona as the defensive tackle. And what have you picked up on what he's all about?
Yeah, so this is a big pickup because after the spring game, I mean, this is what I like about Steve Sarkisian. He has told us, like, if he needs something, he's going to say it at the press conference. And he said after the spring game, and I quote, "The depth on the D line is not where it needs to be. We don't have enough big bodies. It's simple math." And then a couple days later, you see Bill Norton from Arizona. He spent 4 years actually at Georgia. He was actually a high level recruit coming out of Memphis out of high school. And he didn't really produce at Georgia. He had a pretty good year last year, though, at Arizona, 32 tackles, 12 and a half tackles for loss, and 2 forced fumbles. So overall, a good year for him. He's a better run stuffer than he is a pass rusher, obviously. You see that with the stats, but it's something needed. We've obviously lost, in my opinion, the best tandem of defensive tackles in the country with Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy. So it's nice to bring in an extra body to compete with Sadir Mitchell, Jere Bledsoe, and Alfred Collins. He's definitely going to be in the rotation. Obviously, I think having Johnny Nansen, who was the defensive coordinator at Arizona last year, come in and be the linebackers coach for Texas this year really helps. That relationship was really big. Actually, when Johnny Nansen was asked about Bill Norton last year at Arizona, he said, I hope he comes back. He needs, or he didn't even say I hope, he said he better come back because we need him. And basically, he followed him to Texas. It took a little bit longer than us Texas fans thought, but he finally made his way to the 40 acres, and I think he's a decent rotational player for us, Mark.
So, Matthew, before we get to these other defensive linemen in question, is it a situation where you talked about they need more stability in the middle in particular? They need more bodies, they need more girth up there, but is it also that you can always use a superstar, obviously, but are they going to have the type of front line players that are top of the conference kind of players there? Or is that just flat out going to be, I don't want to call it a weakness, but not necessarily a great strength of the team, and they just want to get enough bodies to rotate through to keep people fresh?
So obviously, if someone were to jump in the portal, that was a big name and obviously a big time player as well. I think Texas would be all over it. I think you kind of saw that with Bear Alexander a little bit. 2 days he kind of was floating around where he was in the portal. I think Texas was the one name really mentioned. And he decided to go back to USC, probably money wise. They were made him happy and he was able to come back. And I think he would have helped out because he is better than the other guys we'll talk about later. But yeah, I just don't see this being obviously it's not going to be what it was last year. You had 2, according to Pro Football Focus, of the 5 highest ranked defensive tackles, 2 of them. So that's just not going to happen this year. Alfred Collins did rate pretty well. Like, I think grade was a 78. Now, in context of that, Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat were both above 90. So can Alfred Collins finally play up to the level of, let's say, 83 to an 85 type grade, according to Pro Football Focus? If he can do that, then I think it won't be a weakness. It may be a weaker part of the defense, but it won't be a weakness. Right now, it is definitely the weakness. They struggled getting pressure. I know we have a great offensive line. I think we're going to have a top offensive line in the country. But in that spring game, you could tell we're going to struggle to get pressure. They had to bring blitzes to make the quarterbacks feel uncomfortable. So that is probably the weakest part of our team right now, Mark.
Jay Toya is a player at UCLA who's entered the transfer portal. Now, he has played 29 total games. Now, I don't know if all of those at defensive line or if he was a special teams player, possibly, but most likely, definitely the last 2 seasons, you're looking at tackles totals that would indicate he was generally the starter there. So, your thoughts about Toya from UCLA?
Yeah, so out of the 4 guys we're going to mention, I think he's probably the second best player. He had 28 tackles last year, 4 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, and 1 forced fumble. he's a good player. You can tell he's a lot more agile than Bill Norton, who we mentioned earlier and who just committed today. Bill Norton's kind of an anchor on the defense. He's good at stopping the run, but this guy's a little bit more athletic, can get after the quarterback. You're not going to have a Byron Murphy or Tavondre Sweat, Tavondre Sweat would probably be the best at getting out of the quarterback of the four guys we'll mention. He wasn't even the best out of the two. Byron Murphy is a top of freak at the NFL level. I think he'll have 7 to 8 sacks a year at the defensive tackle position. So we're definitely going to miss that. Again, I just don't see us being as good, but this is, in my opinion, the second best guy. And I think it's needed, along with helps us with depth too. So it really would help out if we could grab a Jay Toya.
So we'll keep it rolling here with other possible candidates here for Texas along the defensive front. Simeon Barrow out of Michigan State.
Yeah, 36 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. Like I said, in ranking these guys, I think he's probably the second worst out of the four we'll talk about. And he's good, but he just doesn't. Again, just not gonna. There's no one in the portal that's gonna be the guys that we left or that left. Unfortunately, he would help out again, bring in a big body. But I think when you said it, Mark, I think it basically is at this point just getting depth pieces. Unless we do land the next guy that we talk about on Dominic Williams. I think he is special. He was actually the defensive defensive freshman of the year his first season with TCU. But I think Simeon Barrow would come in and be a depth piece. I don't really see him as a frontline starter here at Texas.
So Barrow's played quite a bit of football. He's been a 3-year starter, it appears, at Michigan State based on the tackles totals at 34, 40, and 36 for 3 consecutive years, and got into the backfield quite a bit, especially in 2022 with 9 TFLs as a sophomore. So he's been fairly disruptive at times along that defensive front for Michigan State. All right. Then we move on to the aforementioned Dominic Williams out of TCU, freshman All-American and All Big 12 last year as a sophomore.
Yeah, he's a very good player. When he jumped in, that was the guy that immediately flashed to me and said that Texas needs to be all over him. And just to tell you, I mean, the visits he has lined up, he's going to LSU this week, Texas this week, and Oklahoma. He's going to have Colorado in there too. It would shock me if he decided to go there. I wouldn't understand that move at this point, but if they throw enough money at him, I guess I understand why. But to me, you cannot let him go to Oklahoma. If he wants to go to LSU, fine, but you cannot let him go on the other side of this rivalry. He is a very good player. He's very talented. He's the type of guy that has the talent to be that SEC all team type of player. So hopefully we can nab him and get him to Texas. He can stay in his home state of Texas. He doesn't really have to travel that far from Fort Worth to Austin. So hopefully we can keep him up or keep him in the state and come to Texas. I think, in my opinion, he's the best out of the 4 we talked about. So he's very important to me.
So I've obviously watched games where all of these guys have played, but I'm not going to in any way pretend that I was watching Simeon Barrow or Dominic Williams or any of these guys exclusively to say I was scouting them. So I cannot offer any type of evaluation myself on these guys. Now, it is curious that you've got Williams here with fairly pedestrian numbers, but obviously he's been evaluated by people in the know that have evaluated his impact on games. And we know that, especially along the defensive front and on the inside, that statistics don't tell us a whole lot. But Barrow's had the most disruptive plays in the backfield out of these 4, if we're just looking at that. But Williams is just consensus to be the best player.
Yeah, I think it's honestly his size, and then paired with his athleticism, it kind of jumps off the tape to you. I think he's a really good athlete at the position, and kind of like like I said with Bill Norton, you have that anchor now to where if you need to run stuffer, you have that. Whereas now you're kind of looking for that pass rusher, and I think Dominic Williams is the best pass rusher out of the group. If you wouldn't have gotten Bill Norton, I would have been all over Simeon Barrow, but I just don't see. I think he's kind of just the same type of player as a Bill Norton. So we'll have to see what happens. I mean, honestly, we would take 3. We really would. So I'll take 3 out of 4 of these guys all day, every day. We don't have the depth, like Steve Sarkisian said. Sadir Mitchell, coming in for his sophomore season, just came in overweight, Mark. Like, he's 372. He is huge. He came in out of shape. He hasn't really gotten in shape yet. That's someone that was looked out for. That's someone that was recruited highly by Georgia. It basically came down to Georgia and Texas. He chose Texas, and he hasn't really lived up to his billing yet. So hopefully he can get into shape and help out that room. Vernon Broughton, I like, but I don't love him. The only really high-end player here is Alfred Collins, and he just cannot live up to it consistently on a down-to-down basis with that talent. So it's going to be interesting. I think the edges are going to be good on this defense. When we get into the spring game a little bit more, we'll talk about one of the guys that stood out to me. And the interior, just this year, may be a weakness, and especially it's going to be weaker than it was last year, but it may be a weakness overall.
So that's the one big get today. Everyone from Arizona along the defensive front, Bill Norton. There are 3 other candidates there that Matthew just outlined along the defensive front that Texas is interested in. So when we add it all up based on transfer portal gains and losses at this point, anyone who's been in the portal and been lost of significance here?
No. Today we actually just lost Savion Red. And he was going to be our, let's see, 5th, 6th string running back. So no, there was no importance. Like, I thought we would have used him. We used him last year in the red package, where basically short yardage situations, goal line situations, and he would run. He actually did throw a pass last year versus Oklahoma. And that was kind of what we thought he was going to come do this year for Texas, because he weighs 240 pounds at 5'9.5". So we thought, hey, he's just going to be a Big Mac truck coming in goal line situations, short yardage situations, but he obviously decided he wanted to be more than that. No offense to him, but he's going to have to lose weight. If he wants to be an every down back, I think he's capable at a like a MAC type school, but he's going to have to lose 25 to 30 pounds to do that as well.
A lot of people tend to get on these athletes for moving on from team to team and school to school and not supposedly having any loyalty. But let's understand, look at the resumes of most of the players in the portal. Yes, you've got your Dominic Williams types. You've got your other guys that have teams coming after them that have a ton of options. But if you really look by and large at the guys in the portal, I'd say 75 to 80% of them appear to be getting the nudge from their current coach to say, hey, you really don't have a spot here. Look at the depth chart. And they're seeing the writing on the wall and they're moving on. Now, Matthew, I got to say, in looking at the 19 outgoing transfers, I'm a bit surprised that Jalen Catalon he never caught on, never. So that's not a huge loss.
No, just because of injuries, he really didn't play that much for Texas. I think he started 5, maybe 6 games. When he played, he did well, but that's been the story of Jalen Catalon's career at Arkansas. His one healthy year, he was all SEC.
Yeah.
And then from there on out, he's injury, and then when he is on the field, he's good. That's been his issue, though. And the problem is he's not even on the field half the time now. He's on the field 40 to 45% of the time. So it's not a big loss to me. We take it. Andrew Makuba comes in from Clemson, can play at safety. Xavier Filsme, the 5-star freshman that flipped from Florida late in the recruiting cycle, can obviously play safety. So we're pretty good at safety, and I understand why he decided to move on. I wish him all the best. He's a very good player when he's healthy, and I hope he does well.